What is going on, Diesel Nation? We're excited to have you guys with us today on the Diesel Podcast. If you're watching this on YouTube and aren't subscribed, make sure to click the subscribe button, like, comment, let us know what you think about the episode. If there's a particular guest or topic that you'd like covered, we're always checking YouTube comments. Love to hear your guys' feedback and then be able to create future episodes based on your guys' suggestions. Today, I'm going to be joined by Tommy Hasler from ATS Diesel Performance, and he's got a really cool pulling truck. So we're going to be chatting with him about it. Specifically, it's a 7.3, and it's been through a couple different modifications. It's had common rail injection. Now it's running a P-pump. We wanted to ask him about both of those, how viable the common rail swap was, what he thinks of the P-pump, power numbers that he's aiming for. So it's going to be a really cool conversation. Before we get to it, though, I want to remind you guys that our friends over at Kershaw Knives have a 20% off site-wide discount code for you. So if you're in the market for a knife for hunting, fishing, or EDC, they've got a ton of different choices for you. Just use code 20diesel for 20% off site-wide. Their latest model is the Duralock, which has a really smooth opening mechanism. The blade is made out of D2 steel. There's a bunch of different choices for blade shape and then also handle materials and design. So if you're in the market, definitely make sure head on over to their website, check them out, and use code 20diesel for 20% off site-wide. All right, let's get to today's podcast with Tommy Hasler, chatting with him about this really unique 7.3 Powerstroke, the way that's been common railed, P-pumped, his goals for power, asking him, which one's more viable for power in the future, and then also some tips for you guys who may not be building a race truck, but you have a 7.3 and are looking to make sure that it runs as reliable as it can be. Tommy, welcome to the Diesel Podcast. Look forward to chatting with you today about a really cool 7.3 that you have with the really interesting P-pump conversion and chatting with you about your diesel shop and a bunch of other cool stuff. So welcome to the podcast.
Yep. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Tell me a bit about your diesel shop and what you guys do, where you're located. I'm familiar with you guys, but some of our listeners, they might just have heard from you the first time on this episode, or might have just seen your truck, and they're definitely going to be curious about all the different trucks that you work on and things that you do during the week.
So we are a light duty diesel garage that specializes in the Powerstrokes, the Cummins, and the Duramax. We're in Bethel, Pennsylvania. I started the garage probably about 12 years ago and started my dad's barn. And it just started growing. Everything's been word of mouth. And it's if you see the pictures of from before to today, things have grown quite a bit. Yeah, we got a whole team of guys that do really well at everything they do here. Our main trucks that we like to do and work on is the Powerstrokes. That's what we're known for. We have the P-Pump 7.3 behind us. That used to be a Common Rail 7.3, and before that, a Huey 7.3. It just kept growing up through. We're known for our 6.4 or 6.7 Powerstroke, and we did, obviously, a bunch of 6.0s.
Awesome. I know that there's a ton of diesel trucks in Pennsylvania. I always, see posts or listeners even too will message in, and it's a big diesel area. And I was curious about the Powerstrokes in general. Have you always loved Powerstroke? Was it something that you grew up around, or is that your favorite diesel engine for you personally to own or to race? How did the passion for them come to be?
So when I turned 16, we went to buy a truck. And I went to look at an F-150, and my dad said, "You're not buying that piece of crap. You're buying my 7.3 off me." He goes, "I'm going to go get a new truck." So he told me, he goes, "You're giving me $8,000. Here's a truck." So that's what I did. I worked on the farm. Right after I got it, 7.3, it broke. He goes, "Fix it." Fixed it. And from then, it just started to grow and grow and grow. Basically, I like the Powerstrokes. It's something different. Everybody and their brother has a Cummins. So I like being different. When we go to the pools, when we go places, everybody asks, they go, "That doesn't sound like everybody else's truck. What's in that? What's with that thing?" I said, "It's a 7.3. They go, "There's no way." Pop the hood, tilt the body. Everybody's like, "Holy crap." And it's just something different. And Ford people really like Ford being a Ford.
Oh yeah. I know that the Thumbin swap has been around for a really long time, and I find I've said it before on the podcast. I chat with Cummins owners and Duramax and Powerstroke, and I find that the Ford Powerstroke owners are some of the most passionate and loyal fans of the brand and even the specific engine type. and it's always really cool to learn. And you'd mentioned something that really piqued my interest as you talked about that 7.3 being Huey, then Common Rail, then P Pump. Can you walk me through that truck and how it went from like a daily driver to where it is now? It seems like a really cool story that you have behind it.
So yeah, again, this truck started off as a 99 7.3 daily driver farm truck that I bought off my dad. And I started hopping it up as the years go on. My buddy had to come in, so we kept going back and forth, who had more power.
Yeah.
And it kept going and going and going, eventually to where it was still Huey on the road. I was running 400 400s, S480, still driving it, hooked to a trailer. Didn't like a trailer, but still did it. Then I wanted to move up with it. Talked to Jonathan and Dave down at Swamps at the time when they were still around. They said, Tom, there's no more fuel. We can't give you any more fuel. That's it. So next step was obviously P pump it. For the class I wanted to go into, you couldn't P pump it. They were working on a whole common rail setup with the 7.3. It was kind of their own thing, and Jonathan offered it to me, gave me a price, everything. I said, let's do it. So we did that. We common railed a 7.3, had it in the truck. We had the only common rail 7.3 running in a truck, had it out on the track. It tuning was basically its downfall there. It worked, but there were some issues, and eventually it just kept splitting blocks due to tuning and just different issues. Parked the truck for a little bit, just got sick of spending money on it, and then it was just sitting there. I'm like, I got to bring this thing back out. So we brought it back out. We decided to P pump it. You can't beat mechanical. Mechanical is reliable. 2019, we brought it back out, P pumped, had it on the dyno. We made 1,700 horsepower on the dyno with it, put it in the truck. Right away, it started competing in the 3.6 class. We run the Lucas series, and it's just been growing and growing and making more power. We've been testing different stuff with it and just keep going from there.
Somebody had asked us about a Common Rail 7.3, and it was really interesting. And I didn't know that you had done that before. Is that because of the tuning side? Is that pretty much not a viable option, any longer for anyone? It's either keep it Huey or go P pump, or where's that at as far as the future? Do you think with the Common Rail?
It could be done, but for the cost versus what you're getting, is it worth it? I'm going to bring the Common Rail 7.3 back out again. I have all the stuff sitting on the shelf here. I'm going to bring it back out again. Actually, the truck behind me is our 3.6 truck. That's going to go for 3.0 class next year, and we're actually building a super stock 7.3. So it'll be full tube frame, everything triple turbo 7.3. But the Common Rail will be back out. But for the everyday person, I don't think it'd be your best bang for your buck.
Now with the P pump setup, I've heard about them over the years, and I know that there can be a lot of interest because people will hit that fuel limitation that you mentioned with the Huey system. How did you put the P pump? How did the conversion go? Was it something you did yourself? How difficult was it? As far as dialing in the power, what went into being able to achieve the power levels that you needed to with the truck and the P pump conversion?
So with doing the P pump conversion, there's actually a lot of different P pump 7.3s out and around. Most people don't hear of many of them because most of them don't come off the dyno and actually make it in the truck. So I dealt with Ron out of Hypermax. I dealt with Carson Stauffer. He's about an hour and a half north of me. I deal with Chuck. He actually does Ben Miller's 7.3. So there's a bunch of different people that I've been dealing with for it, and I've been taking bits and pieces of different people's kits and putting together what I have now to get basically the setup that I want. So if you would look under my hood, you can see I got see-through valve covers that way you can see different stuff, because again, I'm running 7,000 RPMs out of a 7.3. So I was running into problems, breaking rocker arms, hold downs, that kind of stuff. There's with the P pump 7.3, there's a lot of limitations. Back in 2020, we tried pushing the thing even farther than what we have, and I went through 4 blocks in one season. So we're kind of going back to trying some new stuff again this year. So this year should be a little exciting. We're trying to make that 2,500 horsepower mark for a 7.3 that's going to be reliable through the season.
That's really cool. Where did you find the power limit was when you were splitting blocks? What do you know the power level it was at, or what was the previous kind of threshold that you found for the engine itself?
So obviously rods are a weak point. We have a set of Crowler rods in there, which is American steel rod, really good rods. We have those there. Haven't had a problem there. We have a bed plate on it. We drilled the mains out to 9/16. The head studs are 9/16. The problem with the block, we actually switched over to a Hypermax block, which is a CGI block. And when we went to that, we haven't had an issue since. So back in 2020, when we went through 4 blocks, we were still running a factory block, and we were right around that 2,000 horsepower mark. And I haven't been able to keep it together.
It's so cool to see how 7.3s are progressing even in 2023 with like what you're doing with your truck and the power level that it's at. And it's that I think pushing the envelope, being right there on what people used to say you can make for power with them, and then finding these weak points, addressing them, fixing them, and you just keep going and going and going farther and farther. When as far as the rest of the engine and running that RPM, are there any other things that you anticipate you might run into, whether it's with valve train, pistons? Are there any unknowns at that sort of power level with the 7.3?
Right now we're fighting valve train. That's we're fighting right now. And the one part that is basically, I hate to say, sucks about the 7.3 at this power level is you can't just call up somewhere and say, hey, I need, a better valve train. I need, a good set of rockers. I need a girdle. Everything we do, it's all one-off stuff. We're going to a full billet cam because our cam it's actually a stock cam that is so far underground to get the lift that we need. It's actually wearing into the cam. We're only going to get probably half season out of the cam till we get our billet cam made. So yeah, everything's one off. We were running into the block problem, fix that problem. Now we have the valve train problem. Hopefully we have that fixed out now. Chuck just made us a girdle for it to tie down our rocker arms, which we just went from aluminum style rocker to a tool steel rocker. So hopefully that problem there is fixed. We went from a 13 mil pump that we used to run. Now we're up to a 15 millimeter pump. So we should have quite a bit more fuel there to push through this thing.
That's awesome. I've never heard about some of the things that you're doing, and so it's so cool to just sit back and just see what you're doing with it. And like you mentioned, it's not like you can just call up a place and say, hey, I need this for my engine, and they know exactly what you want, and there's 50 on the shelf, and you just get it, next day aired. You really gotta, I think probably work closely with the companies and the people that you trust to be able to do this. And that was the other part I wanted to ask you about, is taking on a project like this and really blazing a trail with it. How important are the relationships you have, like you mentioned Hypermax and some other companies, in doing something that's so cutting edge like what you're doing with the 7.3?
It's very important because you have your ideas, they have their ideas, and basically at the end you want to have a good product, something that you could possibly sell, because everybody's in business to sell things. And not only you want to have it reliable, and you want to have it out on the track to show that, hey, this is what we can do. So you got to get along. You got to work well with people. You got to find people that basically can take your ideas and actually put it there in material, put something in your hand.
Do you think that the P pump conversion could be, or even the common rail one, maybe one day could be something that could be used, I don't want to say on a street application, but maybe it's like a play truck, something a guy takes to the track, maybe drives it around a little bit. Do you think that that's in the future for the 7.3, or is it just because of the cost and some of the challenges that would be the main challenge with it?
I would say 7.3 making power is going to be more of a competition thing because the cost, like I said earlier, there's actually quite a bit of 7.3s out there that are P pumped that they don't make it off the stand because you get so much money wrapped up into them where people just they run into a problem and it's hey, I'm done. Like I said, back in 2020, we went through 4 blocks.
Yeah.
And it's not just, oh, another block. You can pick up a 7.3 block for $200, but then you have the machining of it. You have the liners you got to put in it. You got drilling out to 9/16s, fitting your bed plate. You get a bunch of machine work. Then you have what else it failed when it did it. So on a daily driver truck, I don't know because there's so many other trucks like the 6.7 Powerstroke is an awesome truck for basically what you spend to have a 7.3 do that. Are people going to do it? I mean, obviously, I did it with mine. You have people, 4 people are very hard headed, especially 7.3 guys. They want their 7.3 to go out there and compete. So, yeah, there's some people that'll do it, but the average person, I doubt it.
Yeah, it's really been interesting too to see how much interest there is in the older trucks, and not just like a 5.9 common rail or an LBZ, but like with the 7.3, there's a lot of interest and questions and episodes we've done on them because listeners are like, hey, do more 7.3 stuff. I'm really interested in one. And it's been really interesting to see how older trucks are almost new again. And then all the innovation and the technology that's happened on the race side is trickling down to the daily drivers, and things like tuning and hard parts and turbos and all that sort of stuff. It's almost like a resurgence of older trucks. And it's the 7.3. It's a great platform. I know a lot of our listeners, they love them. They're not trying to race per se, but they just love something. It starts, it's reliable, put a ton of miles on it. It's just simple, simple and reliable, which is what we all want.
Yeah, 7.3 is a great motor. And I mean, just this past week, the 7.3 IDIs, I mean, they're still going. I just had a guy yesterday drop off a 7.3 IDI, wants the motor completely rebuilt. We had 2 come in for injection pumps. I mean, that's the older 7.3s before even the Huey. Uh, the 7.3 is a very good motor, especially if somebody wants something to get in go. I mean, they have power. No, they don't set the world on fire, but with the parts that are out there, you can get a nice set of injectors from Nate over at Limited. It'll wake that thing right up. You put some good tunes in there, nice turbo. Yeah, the 7.3 does run. We just, like I said, with ours, we're trying to push it to see how far we can push the 7.3.
It's really interesting that you mentioned IDIs because that is another truck we get a ton of questions on. And they're way before my time. I was in grade school when those things were out there. And I know a long time ago there were some things I think Hypermax did with them. Um, and then, but it's like they almost have gotten forgotten. It's always been, I don't know when it switched, but it was about common rail performance and then 12 valve, kind of in the sled pulling world and drag racing. But there's a lot of interest even in those older ones, and I don't know much about them. Um, I've been around a couple or new people that had a few of them, and I wanted to ask you that as far as with the IDI applications, how much power can you get out of those? Is some of the things that we're accustomed to with power, like you'd mentioned the new trucks, it's with the torque that they make, the horsepower, all the different things. It's like we all want that now. We all want 500 horsepower, 1,200 foot-pounds of torque in a daily driver. Is that what people who own these older trucks, are they wanting that too? And is it attainable with something like an IDI? I know it is with the 7.3 Powerstroke with some upgrades, but what about the IDIs?
So the IDI, you have the turboed and the non-turboed. We get calls all the time that people have their non-turboed IDI. Hey, can you put a turbo on it? Yeah, we can. And I always tell them, hey, why don't you just go out and buy a Powerstroke? You're going to get so much more out of it. And like you said, they love them. So yeah, we put turbos on them. The problem with them is for trying to get a bunch of power is the rods can't hold it. The rods, pistons, the parts aren't anywhere as beefy as what they are in the actual Powerstroke. So you can turn the fuel screw up. You can change some injectors. You can change the turbo. You can make them run, and people do it. But for the 500 horse, it's kind of rare for it. But there are some people that do it.
Now, on your pulling truck, what kind of transmission do you run in it? What's the rest of the setup to be able to handle that kind of power?
So in my truck before, when it was common rail, it had the ZF6 behind it. It originally started with a 4100 automatic when it was Huey. Then we went to the ZF6. What's in it now is a drop box reverser setup from SCS. So I got forward and I got reverse. That's it. If I want to change my gear ratio, I do it in the transfer case. I pull the gears out, switch it. I have a 2145 rear in the back, which is basically out of a dump truck. And then in the front is a F-106. That's out of like a 1970s Ford. So it's got big beefy axles under there to hold it. We went to build axle shafts, built U joints to hold the power.
As far as where you take the truck and compete at, what are some places that you're going to be at? Because I know there's going to be somebody interested, and they're going to be like, man, I got to see Tommy's truck in person. I want to hear it. I want to see it go down the track. So what's your schedule look like with racing it?
So we run the East Coast series. We run the East Coast series here on the East Coast. We do travel to Shide down in Kentucky. We will do that. We were going to make diesels in the dark corner last year. Ran into some problems right before, so we didn't make it. But this year, we're running the East Coast series. We're running the Snyder County Runaway Brung series. We'll probably make almost guarantee we're going to be at Shide. We'll be there. So again, we'll go down to Kentucky for their event. So we started traveling more and more with it. But mainly what we do is we run the East Coast series around here.
Shides it's such an amazing event. I haven't been in a while, but I remember the first time I went, I'd never seen anything like that. I'd never seen that many trucks and how powerful they all were. And just, it's definitely an experience that if nobody's ever been to it, you definitely got to go and check it out and see just the performance level of the vehicles that are there. It's just insane.
We like going out there because it's kind of, you have everybody from the country kind of come to one spot,
Yeah.
and it's, hey, let's see where our truck places throughout the country. See where we're at. Like I said, on the East Coast here, I think our trucks here on the East Coast, we have some really good running trucks that we run against. And then, like I said, we all go out to Shide and see where we're placed with everybody else. So it's always a great event out there.
I wanted to ask you about the daily driver part of owning a 7.3. We know they're reliable. We know they can you put a ton of miles on them. But what sort of maintenance or upgrades would you recommend for somebody that is going to daily drive one? They're not looking for crazy power or anything like that, but just to have a nice, reliable setup for, a 99 to 03 truck.
So obviously on the 9903, the weak link on those is transmission. But if you do like a valve body mod or put a torque converter in there, you have a set of good tunes. I really like doing a set of stage 1 or 1.5 injectors from Unlimited with like a 63 millimeter KC turbo. It makes the truck respond, have great power, and it doesn't get the snowball effect where you have to go in there with, fuel pumps, bigger high pressure oil pumps, where people really got to start spending the money in it. And it will give you a truck that almost feels like a newer truck. And you don't have to put that much money into it.
That tipping point is really important. And I'm glad I'm glad you mentioned it because it happens on everything, whether it's a Cummins or Duramax or Powerstroke, is you hit that point where you're going to have to spend a lot more money with supporting that power level. So I think, making that plan initially can really help you save some money. Or, I mean, I've done it. I didn't really have a plan. I added 3 or 4 things, and now I have to get a different injection pump and injectors and custom tuning. Now I need a built transmission, and I get kind of too far into it where I didn't set out to do that.
Yeah, I think that happens with most people that own a diesel, especially when they start hopping it up. You
Yeah.
get that snowball effect. It's like, oh, I'm going to do a tuner. Oh, there goes my transmission. Well, now my transmission can hold, 600 horse. So now I can do a turbo, and it keeps going and going and going. I mean, it's really an addiction. That's why I call the truck twisted addiction. You almost can't stop. You just keep going.
Oh yeah. Well, that's why this podcast exists. That's why diesel shops and racing and events and all that, because you think, oh, I got an 800 horsepower transmission. I can't let it go to waste. I need 800 horsepower. So let's do turbo injectors, tuning, all these hard part upgrades. So that's the fascinating part of it, and it's what I love covering. And that's what was so cool when I saw your truck on Instagram, and you tagged us in a post, and it was a really cool picture of the engine itself, and just I didn't know the background on it. I didn't know you did the a common rail on it, and somebody did ask. I don't remember what platform it was on, so now I can direct them towards the episode so they can hear your experience with it. But if somebody's near you, or maybe they do want to do this, maybe they've set aside the money, they don't want to do a Cummins, or Duramax or something like that. They want to be different. They want a 7.3. Where can they find you? Reach out, ask questions, or maybe they don't want to do race truck. Maybe they just have, a truck they inherited or just bought, and they're like, I need somebody to look it over. I want to get a little bit more power out of it. How can they contact you?
So we have a website, www.hasterdiesel.com. We're also on Facebook. Type Haster Diesel in Facebook or even Google, we pop right up. Especially if you type in there, Haster Diesel Powerstroke. You type in something with a Powerstroke, it'll pop up. So we're on Instagram. We're pretty easy to find.
You definitely got to keep us updated on the truck itself and the power level it attains, because I'm sure you remember as well when 1,000 horsepower was awesome. That's what that was almost, I don't want to say the limit, but it was just something really popular that people wanted. And then it became 2,000. And now it's getting way, way past that. And so to see what you're doing with a 7.3 and the goals that you have for it is really cool. And people are going to want to watch it, whether they're Ford fans or not, whether they own a Powerstroke or not. We want to see this innovation and these power levels and what these trucks are able to attain. So you definitely got to keep us updated on it.
Yeah, we will. I'm hoping for our new truck that comes out next year. Like I said, our super stock truck. I'm hoping to break that 3,000 horsepower mark with a 7.3. So we're doing some experimenting this year with a 3.6 truck, trying to get a little bit farther. But when we stack those 3 HX82s on there, we're hoping we have Weimer. He's building us some John Deere injectors to go in there to really move some fuel. Yeah, we're still doing some stuff to push the 7.3 even farther. So they're dinosaurs, but they're not dead yet.
That's what I love about Diesel Performance is it's so different than what I perceived way before I was into diesel trucks, and it was gas trucks. That's was like my first experience, and it was always like whenever the new model came out and they bumped up the power 15, 20, 30 horsepower, it's like, oh, well, I got to go get it. I got to go buy it, trade my other one in. And with diesel, it's not. I think that's the first thing that really appealed to me about wanting to own one, and just knowing it didn't have a ceiling, whether it was 10 years old, 5 years old, 20 years old. If you wanted to make 800 horsepower, 1,000, we're talking 3,000 horsepower in a 7.3, there is no ceiling to it. And that's what's so appealing about diesel performance in general, but then specifically what you're talking about with the 7.3 Powerstroke and the plans that you have for it.
Yeah, there's like you said, there really is no end. that you can see for them. People keep coming up with new things. We're currently working on a 4-valve head for a 7.3. We had designs drawn up for it, so we're working on getting that cut out. Talked to Jesse Warren. He's gonna cut out a billet block for us. So we just keep pushing them farther and farther and farther.
Oh, I'm definitely going to be paying attention and watching what you're doing. You got a lot of cool stuff going on that I'm interested in. I know a lot of our listeners are going to be interested in. Yeah, I appreciate your time today chatting with us and giving us an insight into what you're building there. And I look forward to seeing what you do. So I'll definitely be, I follow you already, but keeping an eye on some of these milestones that you hit, and let us know. If you find some things, maybe hit another challenge or something like that, or maybe you do break that 3,000 horsepower mark. Keep us updated. I'm definitely want to pay attention to it.
Yep, we'll do.
Don't forget, Diesel fans, make sure and head on over to kershaw.kaiusa.com. Use code 20diesel for 20% off site-wide. It's a great way to save some money, get some really cool gear. They have a bunch of new models for 2023. The latest is the Duralock series, which has a new opening mechanism. It's really smooth to use, keeps your fingers away from the blade when you're opening and closing it. And the blade's made out of D2 steel, which is really nice. There's a bunch of different choices for blade shape, also different handle designs. So if you're in the market for something, definitely make sure and head on over, check them out. Use code 20diesel at kershaw.kaiusa.com. Also want to give a shout out to some of our Patreon supporters, Tyler Loewen at 23 Diesel, John, Caleb, all of our other Patreon supporters, all of you who subscribe on YouTube, podcast apps, follow us on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. We appreciate all your support and look forward to bringing you more of the content you want to hear in 2023. Until next time, keep the shiny side up.